It is my clear honor and privilege to welcome you all to the celebration of the dedication of Madam C.J. Walker Plaza here at Village Hall in Irvington. This is a long time coming, and we're glad we're finally doing it. It couldn't be a more appropriate night. It's not only the last night of Black History Month, but we're on the eve of Women's History Month, and I can't think of an icon who could better serve both of those things better than Madam C.J. Walker. But from a plantation in Louisiana, where her parents had been enslaved, to a mansion that was named Bill Lowaro here in Irvington, there hasn't been many American stories like Madam C.J. Walker, inspiring not only young women, African Americans, but every American, to a story that really, I don't think could happen anywhere else, and it still seems improbable that it happened at all. But 100 years after her death, we're still celebrating her legacy, and we're all still inspired by it today. There are people here, including her great-great-granddaughter, Lilia Bundles, who can tell her story a lot better than me, so I'll focus on the Irvington part. For me, one of the remarkable things was Madam Walker chose Irvington. She had it wasn't like she just happened to find a great piece of land and said, this is a great spot. She had a vision about where she wanted to be. She was the most successful woman of her day, and she wanted to rub shoulders with the most successful businessmen in American history. Most of them robber barons, but it's okay. But she chose Irvington. And tonight, we choose to name one of our most special places in her honor. Madam C.J. Walker Plaza, which we've just started using the name in probably the last 6 months to a year regularly, is the place we come to light our Christmas tree. It's where we have a band play on Halloween. It's where we come together for the Black Lives Matter rallies. We come together to yell against injustice. We come here when the Supreme Court rulings aren't to our liking. It's become a rallying place not just for Irvington and the river towns, but really for Westchester County, and that's special. And now it has a special name that I think will continue to inspire people even more. I hope that there's the children walking by Village Hall who say, Mom, Dad, who's Madam C.J. Walker? And they know that story. But then I hope her name becomes so synonymous, or so well-known, so famous, that people don't have to ask that anymore. And they're like, I assume this plaza has been like that for 100 years. So I actually hope that in 100 years' time, her story is not nearly as remarkable. But 100 years later, it still is. And that's something that we need to celebrate, reflect on perhaps. But tonight is the night to really celebrate a legacy and a woman that truly is remarkable. So I would like to start tonight with an invocation by the Reverend Dr. Erwin Trellinger from the Calvary Baptist Church. Reverend, would you please come up and kick us off formally?
Good evening, everyone. Before I pray, I want to thank the mayor. Yep. I want to thank the mayor and the administrator.
Administrators pay a lot more.
Oh, okay. But I'm thanking him for his words that he shared, because while I was driving here, I thought about what I was going to say before I prayed. And I go to Ghana at least once or twice a year, and there is a place in Ghana called the Cape Coast Slave Castle. And it is the final spot in which the captive slaves, captive Africans, were there terrorized, tortured, and then put into these dungeons that were there, where they stayed for 3 months before they did a 3 months voyage to the Americas. And America is writing some things in regards to words. If you go to the capital of the United States and you look at a piece of stone, and the stone that is there is a piece of step that the word says, here is a stone of steps that was carved out by enslaved Africans. And it's so important that the words that we use, that they become so correct. Madam C.J. Walker is a descendant of individuals that made it from Cape Coast Slave Castle through the Atlantic Ocean, through the islands, through the shores of America, and within her DNA, it all comes from a place that has been resilient in all that we say is Black America or African American. I love the fact that when I teach in my church about Madam C.J. Walker, I say very clearly that she is the first woman millionaire of the United States. Not that she was the first African American, but she is the first woman millionaire. And it makes a great sense. I'm going to use the words of the Negro National Anthem for my prayer on tonight. Let us bow our heads. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, that we forget Thee. Shadow beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God and true to our native land. Father, as we come to the end of this celebration of Black history, and we enter into a season of celebrating women of America, may we truly respect, honor, and hold dear the lives of African Americans that were enslaved and then moved beyond enslavement to become great heroines and heroes within these shores called the United States. And may we always, always, in the tradition of our Jewish brothers and sisters, say the name of Madam C.J. Walker, and may her memory always be blessed. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Being the mayor, not the administrator, a lot of wonderful people. It's probably the biggest blessing of being an elected official is you meet a lot of people. Probably also the biggest curse, but tonight's a positive night. But one of the most remarkable people I've gotten to meet over the years is Madam C.J. Walker's great-great-granddaughter, Amelia Bundles, who's very, very generous with her time. If you ever have a couple hours, go to YouTube, put her in there. She's given some unbelievably great lectures. I've learned most of what I know about Madam C.J. Walker from her mouth on YouTube. You know, it's I can also probably buy her books, which is probably better for her. She's another inspiration. I can go through her biography, but she's also very humble. But she is an unbelievable author. She is a journalist. She's on the board of Columbia. I guess I am doing her biography, but I didn't write it down, so I'm leaving a lot out. But, without further ado, Amelia Bundles.
When she built Hillsborough, she said she was very intentional about where she wanted to be. She wanted to be in the wealthiest community in America to make a statement. And so now the Plaza has made that for her. I can't imagine, you have to believe that would happen. But it was her dream of dreams. And the name Villa Lawaro, L-E-W-A-R-O, came from Enrico Caruso, the famous operatic tenor, who visited the house when it was being built. Madam Walker and her daughter both loved opera. And when he came to the house, he said it reminded him of home in Naples. So he took letters from her daughter's name, Delia, L-E, Walker, W-A-R-O, the long-departed first husband. But be here and such a perfect place to know that the Christmas tree is in the plaza. I'll have to come for the Christmas tree lighting. Because Madam Walker's birthday was December 25th. So she very much was a Christmas baby. The fact that there is protest there because she was very much a social justice advocate. We all think of her as the person who created hair care products, who was a pioneer of the modern hair care industry. But she also was, as I'm sure all of the children who are here know from their classes, was a philanthropist, a supporter of the arts, and also very much a social justice advocate. When she had her first convention of her sales agents in 1917 in Philadelphia, at what had to have been one of the first conventions, if not the first conventions, of American women entrepreneurs, she said to the women, I want you to understand that your first duty is to be humanity. I want others to look at us and realize that we care not just about ourselves, but about others. She gave prizes to the women who had sold the most products, like Mary Kay, who was born a couple of years later, but she also gave prizes to the women who had contributed the most to charity. And at the end of the convention, the women sent a telegram to President Woodrow Wilson, urging him to support legislation to make lynching a federal crime. So that was more than 100 years ago, and you know that bill was finally signed into law. But she was there pushing for that. When she moved into the house, some people said, oh, you're spending money on this fancy house. And she said, I want it to be an inspiration. So many people have worked to preserve this home. So many people have embraced her legacy. And so my very first visit to Villa Laurel was in the late 70s, early 80s, when it was still owned by the Companions of the Poor. It was a retirement home for a group of older ladies. They would let me in on the first floor. I could look around. It would let me walk upstairs. Some years later, I went upstairs. But over time, the Village of Irvington and the Westchester Historical Society, the Irvington Historical Society, the library have all embraced her legacy. And now we are at the point where she actually is celebrated. But I feel like I need to mention a few names. Brent Legg from the National Trust. Some of you may have known Frank Sanchez, who used to be at the Gould Estate, who worked with the National Trust. But when people very quietly were rooting for Madam Walker, Ingo Appel and his wife Darlene bought the house in the 1980s, and they did a little bit of work and tried to shore things up. And then Harold and Helena Doley, who many of you know, lived in the house for 25 years. And then I am so excited that it's Richelieu Dennis and his family who purchased the house a few years ago. Rich is someone who I admire as an entrepreneur, who had the vision of bringing Madam Walker's products back to life. And so I don't know if Rich is here. Rich is not here. Well, anyway, Rich is here in spirit. But William James, who is the what is the chief cook and bottle washer, is what I would say. But he is the director of operations for Villa Laurel. Steve Tilley, who is many of you know who's here, who's the architecture historian, who's an expert at historical places and the architect who is helping to restore the house. But just a quick little bit of history, a sort of timeline on the house. We are so excited about what's happening now as the house is being restored. During the last month or two, we've had visits from the Girl Scouts, from Jack and Jill, from sororities. I did a tour with the employees of Eileen Fisher. So the house is coming alive again. We recorded a History Channel Ancestry.com commercial there that aired on Greatest of All Times on History Channel. But just to give you a little timeline, and I'm looking at the young people here because you have to do your Women's History Month reports, so you know this whole class. Madam Walker moved into the house in 1918. She had a grand opening party in August of 1918. Her first and only Christmas in the house was in December of 1918, and there's a woman who wrote a beautiful essay about what it was like to open presents and to have everyone sit around the table and to pray at dinner and to really have her enjoy the beauty of this house. Always live music when she was entertaining. After she died. She died in a house in May of 1919, and then her daughter inherited it. And her daughter had great parties in the house, including a very wonderful 4th of July party in 1921 for the president of Liberia, who had come to the United States really to get money that he was owed because of help that he had given during World War I. He was not invited to the White House, but he was invited to Villa Luaro. And then my grandmother's wedding reception was their grand reception in November of 1923. And then throughout the 1920s, Amelia Walker, Madam Walker's daughter, who Langston Hughes called the jewel goddess of Harlem's 1920s, had many parties there. We saw it come alive when the Dole's hosted the 1998 Designer Show House. And now I just want to thank all of you for highlighting Madam Walker, for embracing her, for making her a key part of the village of Irvington, both its history and its future. Thank you very much.
I can definitely use an hour of that, but you probably want to sit down. YouTube, there's a lot of great content there. He was already briefly mentioned by Amelia, but William James is here to represent Richelieu Dennis. Quick thing, quick story there. Richelieu had bought the rights. And I think, you can please jump in if I get the dates wrong, but I believe it was 1906 until, current. Basically, the company's been in business, but there was about a 15, 20-year period where the rights were sold, but no one was using, no one was like marketing it or using it really. So Richelieu Dennis, who has an unbelievably inspiring story himself, bought the rights, and now they sell it at Sephora. And to me, that is just such a great, it's still alive, you can still buy the products, and he found out that Villa Luaro was for sale. Someone that, was so into the history and so inspired by Madam Walker, and now he's the kind of overall caretaker of the estate. It's such an unbelievable story, and we're so lucky that sometimes things work out like that, and it seems a little bit divine to me. So I get chills every time I hear the story, but that renovation is ongoing, and again, architects like Steve Tilley are not easy to find, so we're lucky to have you there with your eye and your, to make sure it's done properly. So, William, thank you so much for being here. It's been very great to meet you. Next up is a great friend of mine, my fellow board member, Trustee Arlene Porter.
So it's awesome to see all these people here. But I just want to tell you a story. When I first moved to Irvington in 2011, I had no idea that down the street from my house was a historical treasure. A mansion built by the daughter of formerly enslaved people, a woman who went on to build an empire in hair care products. The classic rags to riches American story. Yet, this was a story that wasn't told. When my older daughter was in the 2nd grade, and now she's in the 9th grade, she came home from school so excited. She had read a book about Madam C.J. Walker, the first self-made American female millionaire and a black woman. And she learned that she had lived in Irvington. My daughter was so excited to learn about Madam C.J. Walker and all of her accomplishments, despite her humble beginnings. She was so excited to learn about Villa Luaro, she could not stop talking about it. She was probably a little bit embarrassed. And today we were talking about it, and she said, I don't remember that. And I'm like, I remember. She was also excited to know that Villa Luaro was built by the first black architect licensed in the state of New York. But, I, on the other hand, I was a little taken aback and a little bit surprised that I had lived in Irvington at this point for a few years, and literally at the end of my street, because I live on Riverview Road, there was this unbelievable story, this mansion of really an unbelievable story of the first self-made female millionaire, black or white. And it was a story that I think one would think would be so widely shared and just so lauded and talked about. And so, it wasn't, and I think that was a little bit surprising to me at the time. But fast forward a few years, I think, those days have passed, and I think we really have taken on this legacy of Madam C.J. Walker the way we should, as something to be extremely proud of and something to really celebrate. So today we celebrate and we acknowledge Madam C.J. Walker's legacy, her entrepreneurial spirit, her philanthropy, her activism. But I also think today is about, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. And, what we name our streets, who we name them after, our streets, our buildings, our parks, our plazas, that really matters. It is a reflection of your values. And so I think I'm very proud of this board, and I'm proud of our community for making, when we say we want to make Irvington more welcoming and inclusive, that we take action. And I think that's what today is about. So by naming this place, as Brian told you all guys, and you guys all know it, all the things that take place in Village Hall, we are acknowledging, right, we're giving Madam C.J. Walker a place, I think, that she deserves, a place of importance. And it's not, just Madam C.J. Walker, she's not just about our local history, she's about our collective American history. And I think I'm very, very proud of today. And I thank you guys for being here. I'm really excited. I'm proud of
Our mic that doesn't work like produces weird noises. I was trying to build a dramatic so at this point, I would like to, unfortunately, all of our other elected officials are working hard for us in either Washington. I didn't say hard work. Our congressman, the great Jamal Bowman, is in D.C., of course, but Quantel Bazemore is here representing. Another unbelievably inspiring woman, Senator Andrew Stewart Cousins, is up in Albany. And luckily we have Samira Brandon here representing her. And then a really gifted Assembly member, Mary Jane Chimsky, is also up in Albany. And Alyssa Jacobs is here on the And the other person I'd like to give the opportunity to speak is our soon-to-be elected county legislator. Please come on up, David Imamura.
2 hours, right here. Thank you, Brian. It is such a thrill to be here. I grew up in Irvington, and if you had told me that Irvington would name the Village Plaza after Madam C.J. Walker, I would have laughed you out of the room. Right? If you had told me that the Village Plaza would become the focus of social justice protests and Black Lives Matter protests, I would have laughed you out of the room. Right? And I think that this move today shows how far we have come as a community. And but also, as Arlene said, how much farther we have to go. Right? So growing up here in Irvington, going through the schools, like Arlene said, I saw the state every day while I was driving to the high school. I didn't know what it was. Right? And the way I found out what it was I remember I was in 10th grade, and it was almost like a side note. It was almost a footnote. It was like, oh, did you know that that property over there was the first person to be a first woman of color who would be first woman millionaire in American history? Almost as a side note. Cameron's nodding because that was one of his experiences too. Right? And because, and I am so thrilled because of what we're doing today, because of the people in this room. Madam C.J. Walker will no longer be a footnote. Right? And because of what we're doing here, let this not be the end, but the beginning of something great, of making sure that people of color are recognized for their work and what they have done in America. And let that be part always of Irvington's history. So thank you so much. Thank you.
we have the logistics worked out, but it's also naming Fargo Lane as Madam C.J. Walker Way. That's my name. It might be Spanish. And actually, we were talking earlier, William and I and Amelia, that it might be cool to start here in Madam C.J. Walker Plaza and then walk up to the unveiling or the other way around. We'll work on that, but we have a little bit of time. But that's something else we want to do to tangibly put that name prominently. That would be right on Broadway, so everyone can see the name and not have to guess what that house is or was. So we're coming very close to we get to actually do the unveiling. We have one little PS on that, is that although it looks exactly like it's going to look, this is actually a plastic version. The metal plate is still being made. But to get us in the right mood for this celebration, I'd like to invite up the Reverend Dr. Claudine Reese-Smith to sing something for us.
Good evening, everybody. As the great-granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker said, she loved music. I know that for a fact. I was just in her home not too long ago, looked at the organ and everything else in the music room. So I'm going to just sing a little bit of a piece, a concert piece I learned years ago. It's this little right of mine, but it's not the one you know. And it's a concert piece, but it's about letting the light shine. Everybody has a light, but you just have to make sure it's hooked up. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.
Madam Walker was in the choir and sang for Andy when she was still a poor washer woman, but she had a good enough voice to be in the choir. We thought it's good. But and she loved everything from opera to spirituals to jazz to ragtime. I feel sure that you would have been in the music room.
Well, now that we're uplifted and ready for our light to shine, shine, why don't we go out and put the light on the plaza?
Thank you. I used to work here 17 years ago up at the house. Everybody looks like this. Thank you.
Want to set up here too? No. Well, if you want to, I know, but I thought I'd get more out. What do you think I have, a photographer? We tried to do it before.
I just heard loud noises, and I was in this. Eight, 7. Glowing plastic. Exactly. Hold up better than yeah, my love. You want to slide up to the top step here? Yeah, of course. Just what I got. I got a shot. Like the set here. You'll send somebody up to secure this? I'll take care of it. Yeah, we have time. And you're going to take it on your way down? Yeah.
that you